Hello everyone, welcome to Java Tutorials. My name is Kishore. In this video, we will discuss how we can use multiple catch blocks and also we will make use of the throw keyword in order to explicitly generate an exception. So multiple catch blocks you can always write after the try block, and when the try generates multiple exceptions, multiple catch blocks will be useful. In order to generate the exception, what we will do is we will not write the statements something like a equals to 10 by 0 or accessing an invalid index in an array. Instead of doing that, we will manually generate the exception. Some of the inbuilt exceptions, whatever we have discussed in our previous videos, like array index out of bounds exception, arithmetic exception, or null pointer exception, we will try to manually generate to understand how to generate the exception through the throw keyword, and also how the catch blocks work whenever a single try generates multiple exceptions. The syntax to explicitly generate an exception is throw keyword followed by the exception object you need to create. You already know how to create an object. You will use new keyword followed by the constructor, but to create the exception object, you will be using throw followed by the exception object. If you look at any exception class, let's say array index out of bounds exception, array index out of bounds exception, it is extending one class index out of bounds exception, and if you open that, you can see runtime exception. And if you see runtime exception, you see runtime exception extends exception. Look at all the exception class. They have some default constructors, and then they have the constructor taking string as a parameter, and they are passing this string message to the superclass. And who is the superclass for exception? It is throwable. If you go to throwable, you see throwable as this message called detail message, which is actually initialized somewhere here. If I just scroll down, you can observe whoever is calling the superclass constructor of throwable, either exception or the subclass of it, passes the message. It reaches here and it is going to initialize this detail message. And that detail message as a getter method. You can observe what is the getter method for that. That is a get message that returns the detail message. So if you create any of the exception object, whether it is a runtime exception or whether it is an array index out of bounds exception, you can always pass that parameter while creating the exception object that will be initialized. And through get message in the catch block, you can always read what is the message. Let's do that. We will try to create the exception explicitly using the new keyword followed by the exception. What we will do, we will create a scanner object first, so that we will take input from the keyboard, and in the input what we will do is we will decide for this input it has to throw arithmetic exception, for this input it has to throw array index out of bounds exception, like that. Let us first enter some number. So we write enter a number, and whatever the number you enter, we will store it in this variable, and then we will write a try block with multiple catch blocks, like a catch one to handle arithmetic exception, and we will print here e dot get message. What is this e dot get message going to do? It is going to print the message of the arithmetic exception object, and then we will write another catch block which is going to throw array index out, which is going to handle array index out of bounds exception, and we will print again the same e dot get message. But what we will do, each time we print this message, we will print one line like this, and we will write AE to understand which catch block is getting executed. Here also I will write this. Here I will write array index out of bounds exception. Let me write one more catch that is going to handle null pointer exception. And we will change this to NPE. and it is going to print e dot get message. And what we will do, we know that arithmetic exception occurs when you divide a number by zero. Array index out of bounds exception occurs when you access an invalid element or invalid index, sorry. And null pointer exception occurs whenever there is a null reference and you are trying to access the member. Instead of writing that statement, we will understand through throw keyword also we can explicitly generate the exception. If number is zero, what we will do, we will write a throw keyword, then new arithmetic exception. And notice I am creating the object on default constructor and I'm not passing any message. If the number is zero, arithmetic exception occurs because it is generating arithmetic exception object in the try block and it prints this AE followed by E dot get message. Let's see what E dot get message prints. Let me enter a number 0 and you can see AE that E dot get message is returning null. That's why print statement is printing null. What we will do, we will write here one message because every constructor of exception has a string taking constructor that will initialize the detailed message of throwable, right? Let me write here something called invalid number to divide, something like this. If I run this program, look at the output. If I enter a zero, you would see invalid number to divide. That is because e dot get message is actually returning that invalid number to divide, and you can write here that number also. And let me run this program again and enter 0. You can see invalid number to divide, that is 0 is printing. So that is what this constructor is doing. It allows you to pass the error messages so that in the catch block you can decide where to print the error message, whether it has to be printed in the console, whether it has to be printed in the browser, or it has to be printed on the mobile screen. That you can decide. We will try to generate another exception if number is -1, and we will generate array index out of bounds exception, array index out of bounds exception, and we will pass an error message telling that invalid index and the index number is stored in this number variable. If I enter -1, then this if condition will be true. It throw an array index out of bounds exception, and the catch block having array index out of bounds exception as a parameter should be executed now. If I run the program and give -1 this time, you can see it is printing the statement present in the catch block having array index out of bounds exception as the argument and invalid index -1. And we will write another condition if number is equal to something called -2, and we will throw new null pointer exception. And if I create an exception object through default constructor, the message will be null. If I enter -2, this time the third if condition is executed and the third catch block will be executed. And you can still pass the message like null pointer exception because number is this number. And if I run the program and enter -2, I get NPE because number is -2. We will write one last statement called program exits here at the end of the main method outside the catch block. And now if I run the program and enter -1, I get invalid index and program exits here. If I do not enter 0, -1 or 2, something, if I enter like 5, I just get program exits here. This is just to understand how we can make use of throw keyword when we want to manually generate an exception. We have generated a inbuilt class exception, but the throw keyword mainly comes into picture when you manually want to generate a custom exception. We are going to discuss how to generate a custom exception in upcoming videos, but whenever you want to generate a custom exception like inception balance exception, transaction declined exception, transaction limit exceeded exception, and all, then JVM cannot create such exceptions. You have to create such exception and you have to throw such exception. But here we are just throwing inbuilt exceptions to understand how the throw keyword is useful. Okay. So that is it about the throw keyword and how we can use multiple catch statements. See you in the next video. Thank you so much.